everyone, this is Veronica with Sew It Seams, and welcome back. Today we are going to be looking at block M-7 in the Dear Jane quilt book, also called Junko's Rose Garden. Now this block has been one that's kind of been messing with my brain just a little bit. It looks simple, and then I look at the line drawings and it looks really complex. So I'm going to actually be doing a couple of different methods in trying to create this block, and doing some, I think we're going to be doing some reverse applique in the center here, and then regular applique with the pieces that are coming around the outside and the little orange peel sections on the corners. So first, let me show you the fabric that I've chosen for today. For my main fabric, I'm going to be using this orange fabric with these cute little ducks all over it. And then, as usual, I will be using muslin as my background. I want to take this block step by step and just kind of break down what I'm going to be doing. And we'll see if it works, and if it doesn't, we'll try a different method. But as I'm looking at this center part here, the line drawing actually follows pretty closely. I was thinking of just doing regular applique, but these points right here are going to get pretty vicious trying to applique that without the fabric fraying really badly or creating some issues. So I'm actually going to do reverse applique. And what I'm going to do is, this background is my muslin. So I'm going to cut a larger square of the muslin. I want to have enough room to mess with it, so I'll probably cut one about 6 inches square, and then I will cut a smaller square of the orange fabric, which will be pinned to the back and I can cut out. So first, let me get my muslin square. I'm going to probably cut mine about 6 inches, and we'll start from there. Here is my muslin piece, which is working as the background for the entire block. And I want to know where my diagonals are. So all I did was do a simple finger press, fold it in half and fold it in half, and then press it down so that I get that light crease so I can see where my diagonal is. Now that I have my diagonal, I cut out the template of the very center of that block. This piece is made from the main focus fabric, which is the orange that I chose. What I need to do is line it up into the center. So I have my points are coming right here with each crease. And this, I'm actually going to draw the outline of it. I'm going to do it very faintly. This is going to be my applique line where I'm stitching. Since this is on the muslin, it's not going to show up with my white pen. So I'm very lightly going to use my pencil. There, and now I have that template drawn out. That is going to be my stitching line. With reverse applique, this center part is going to be cut away, and this will be my stitching line. So what I'm going to need to do is cut into the center here, making sure to leave a seam allowance, a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to cut out this very center part here. There, we have the center cut out, and okay, so that is all trimmed. Let me back out just a little. There. One tip that I had seen on another site where they were talking about doing reverse applique was that they actually finger pressed right along that stitching line. So I'm going to work on finger pressing around this curve. And you can't see a lot of a difference, but there is enough of that bend now in there so that when we start to do stitching down, it will make it easier for this to fold in. So I'm going to do that around all of these little curves here. All right, all of that is now creased right along those stitching lines. Now I'm just placing my muslin fabric over my main fabric because I want to be able to, it's not a huge area, but I think it would be kind of fun since I have these fun little ducks to see one kind of pop through. Here's one. These two little ducks here are absolutely adorable. You see that? Just little, they make me smile. So I want my fabric to be right there. I can trim away the fabric that's behind later. So for now, I'm going to pin this fabric and then I can work on some applique. When you're pinning with reverse applique, you want to make sure that there's enough room for your seam allowance to come up. So at least 1/4 of an inch from the side. And what I'm doing is making sure that I don't pull my fabric out of kilter here, which can be easy to do. Now that it's cut, it'd be easy to skew it and pull it, but I don't want that to happen. There. Seems to be nice and even. We're all set to start stitching. Let me go get my thread and my needle. When appliquing, especially in the reverse applique, it's best to try to start in a spot that is the straightest. On a curve, it's a little hard to find the straight, but right here would be a good spot to start. So I'm taking my thread already knotted and I'm just going to bring it up and start it right on that line. And then I use my needle, just kind of push the whole thing down. And then, whoops. And then I'll start doing my stitches. Since my thread matches my fabric, I don't have to worry about making invisible stitches. I do try to get them as small as I can and make them neat so that when you do look at something and you see the stitches, they're not glaring or anything like that. You'll want to be careful not to manipulate these corners too much or any edge of your fabric because that fabric has been released from the structure when it's been cut. So it does tend to fray more. And you can see mine is starting to fray a little bit right there in the corner. So I'm trying my best not to mess with it or try to keep pushing it underneath, things like that. So what I'll do is just take my stitches and with my stitch kind of use the needle to push it under. And you know, it's one of these things where it if I look at it with a microscope, you can see every little error. But once this quilt is completed and all the blocks are done, we're talking about 255 total blocks. No one is going to notice. Now I'm coming to this next part, so I'm starting with pushing it under in the center and then kind of pushing it down like that. Do you see how that needle was able to just slowly push that fabric down so it's down in position? So I'm going to now get my stitches. Well, what did I do? All right, you see my mistake here. I'm going to have to unthread and start over. All right, so now you're seeing a mistake here live. I want to, my thumb is holding this down in the perfect position, so I'm going to pin it. And silly me, what happened is I got a phone call in the middle of my last stitch, and so now it kind of threw me off my groove. All right, rethreaded that needle. And my thread is in the back. So let's get back on track here. Here we go. And now just continue stitching all the way around. The applique of this center is completely finished, and you can see the cute little ducks showing through there in the center. So now I'm going to trim away the excess from the back. And since I need to use more of this fabric for the other parts, I'm going to try to make sure that I don't get too crazy with how I'm cutting this away. That way I'll have enough to work with. All right, I've trimmed away, leaving approximately 1/4 of an inch all around. And there is the very center of the block. Now the next part of this block are some little crescent shapes around each edge. And so I'm just going to show with this template that I've cut out here, we're going to have this little crescent of the orange fabric going around each section so that the points are going to line up with the points on here. So I'm going to trace this template 4 times onto the orange fabric. I have my 4 crescent shapes cut out, leaving a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. And with each of these crescents on the inner curve, you want to clip right up to the line. Just clip along that curve because you need to be able to have this piece fold under. You just can't get a smooth fold under without cutting that fabric. And I'm also going to, like I did with the other pieces, just do a light finger press all the way around. That just helps to allow that fabric to fold under as I'm stitching. So let's take a look at how I'm going to line up the pieces on this piece of fabric. On my crescent shapes, I have my points here, and I want them as close as I can to this point. To make that easier, I am pinning right through the point on the crescent, and then I'm pinning right above the point here. So I'm going to do that on either side. That will just anchor my piece to where it needs to be. Okay. I've got my crescent now pinned on here. And now, because I have it in position, I'm going to pin right along the center there. And when I'm ready to stitch, I will be shifting my pins as I go. So I know that this point is where I want to line up. And generally, you shouldn't start an applique right at a corner, but I want to make sure that this doesn't shift. I am just shifting my pin down below because I'm going to fold under right here. Now this point is going to get very narrow. I'm going to do the best I can to get it under there, but because it's not going to have a whole lot of room for a lot of this excess fabric, I'm going to taper the material. So I'm tapering it on either side. Ouch. So that allows enough room for folding it under, but not having a lot of bulk. I will have some bulk that you just can't get away from it. Okay, so it seems a little bit fiddly, but this way I have this still anchored. My point is right there where the edge of my pin is going through, and that's going to line up really nicely right there. So then I'm going to start stitching. I'm actually going to start my stitch right here is the very point of that crescent. I'm going to start my stitching up just a little bit from that. And what that will do is that'll allow me just a little bit of wiggle room to maneuver the fabric underneath that point. I'm just going to keep moving that fabric underneath and taking my stitches. I'll meet you at the point at the other end. Okay, I am now coming down to the end here where I'm going to be stitching. So I've folded the fabric under and just going to stitch to the end here. And I want to make my last stitch on this side right into that point. That way it's anchored in there and it's not going to shift. I can take my pin out now. And now I'm going to take whatever's on the end there and I fold it straight under, and I'm actually shifting it. I'm moving that that underseam right up against this side underneath. I'm going to take one tiny little stitch right in the end. That just kind of anchors it. And then I'm going to push under right here on the end here. And this is where it gets just a little fiddly, and it won't always be perfect. Okay, using my needle, I'm going to push my fabric underneath, and what I'm trying to do is right at this point, I'm starting to manipulate this a little too much. Just be careful, because after some time your fabric is going to fray if you mess with it too much. But I'm pushing it under and I'm using my thumb to hold it. And I'm not worried about all down here. I just want to get that very point stitched down in place. So this is like an anchoring stitch. It's not always going to be perfect, but this is how I do it. It helps to keep it in place. So I've got that anchored down. Now I can get the rest of that pushed under and stitched down. So I've got that pushed under. And there is that point. Now you can see it bulges a little bit. I can't get it really straight all the time. Sometimes it comes a lot easier than others. That one was a little rough for me. But like I said earlier, when this block is in the big quilt, no one's going to be coming around with a magnifying glass saying, hey now, you got that wrong. So you get it as close as you can and don't overstress it. Don't overstress you and don't overstress your fabric. I'm going to keep stitching all along this curve now. And I'll meet you back at the end. I'm nearly at the end, but it will be too difficult to try to just stitch all along this line and then fold it under. So before I even get to that end, I'm going to start folding under my fabric. So I start at that point. You see I can fold that under. I'm holding it down with my thumb, and then I can push under right there. I've got that held in place, and now I'm going to pin it so that corner is down, and then that allows me to push the fabric under all along here. Oops, I've got a little bit here that's being stubborn, but I'll be able to get that when I stitch up there. So let's get these few stitches. Okay, I'm right up at my tricky point. So I'm going to take my needle, instead of using the point of the needle, using the side of the needle helps to keep your fabric from really becoming a problem. And if it doesn't always go down with pushing, that's where the stitching can come in. So I've got this little bit here that won't go under, but I've stitched in front of it, and now I'm going to stitch underneath it. And that should pull it underneath the fabric. One thing to be cautious of here at the end is to remember we don't have a lot of fabric right here to deal with because this is where the edge is. So just be cautious where you're stitching. Don't want to get the fabric fraying there. And there we have one crescent shape stitched on. I'm going to do the same with the 3 others, and when you get them all stitched on, give it all a really nice press. All 4 of the crescent shapes are now stitched on, and I gave the block a really nice press, and it looks really good. The last step now is to take my template for the little orange peels, which are going to go into each corner like so. So I need to trace these out on the orange fabric and then stitch them down. I've traced the outline of the orange peel on the orange fabric, and I needed 4 of them, and I went ahead and I found little ducks to trace around so that these will be in the middle of the orange peels, because why not? Might as well have some fun with this really fun fabric. So I'm going to cut these out, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance around the orange peel, and then I will applique them into the corners of the block. The 4 orange peels are cut out, and I just am going to kind of place them around the block in different positions. Okay. Now, the orange peel, when you look at the main block, it lines right up to the point here where those other 3 points meet. So I'm going to put these in position. I've got my pin going right through the point of this orange peel, and I'm pinning right at where I want that point to be. Okay? And then I'm going to make sure my orange peel is laying in the right direction. It's coming straight out to that corner of the block. And then I can pin this. Okay, so I have it in position, and then I'll be able to start folding under and appliquing all around like I've done with all these other parts. So I will be back when all 4 of these orange peels are stitched down. And here we have the finished block. I got all 4 of those orange peels appliqued on and trimmed the block down so that it is the correct size. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of block M-7, also called Junko's Rose Garden, from the Dear Jane quilt. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below or send me an email at soitseemscreations@outlook.com. You can also give the video a thumbs up, and you can subscribe and click that notification bell so that you'll be notified each time I upload a video, which is every Monday. This is Veronica Johnson with Sew It Seems, and I'll see you next time.